Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Hey, all you minties, Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my overview of the Deathstroke the Terminator by Marv Wolfman Omnibus Vol.1 from DC Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. So here we have the latest omnibus with Slade Joseph Wilson, Deathstroke, and it is honestly the earliest omnibus, but we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second as far as his stories are concerned, with the exception of New Teen Titans. But anyway, okay, so we have this cover here, Deathstroke the Terminator by Marv Wolfman Omnibus Vol.1, this amazing badass cover by Mike Zeck, who supplied most of the covers for the series. I love this design right here with Deathstroke's good eye. Deathstroke the Terminator by Marv Wolfman Omnibus Vol.1, the DC logo. And then this piece back here. Don't call him a hero. No, you should not call him a hero. A little bit about the book, and then what's collected in here, and the ISBN and the book retailing for $125. Before I take the dust jacket off, though, I do want to kind of give you an idea, if you have Deathstroke in omnibus format, where it fits in on the shelf. So if you have Deathstroke the New 52 and Deathstroke by Christopher Priest, this is taking place in the 90s, whereas the New 52, of course, started in 2011, and then you have the Rebirth era, and you've got about another omnibus worth right here. Actually, it should be just one more. The series only went to issue number 60, but then again, you've got the beginning of the Deathstroke New 52 era, and you still have some other little mini-series that they could compile into another omnibus, but these are the only ones available so far. No solicitations or catalog for a volume 2 yet, but this is what it will look like on your shelf, all with a little bit of a different design. So bringing the focus back to this here, and I just want to make sure the DC logo isn't the new Bullet logo. They've been doing that with some of the new Omnis and DC Finest books. You have the bios here: Marv Wolfman, Steve Irwin, Bill Blyberg, and Tom McGraw. So interesting, most of the time in the flaps they tell you a little bit about the character. This is really cool. Starting to become a bigger and bigger fan of these art on boards that feature the panels from the comic book. They've been doing the same thing with Marvel Comics, and it looks like DC is starting to do the same as well. I like that. It kind of gives you a small glimpse as to what's to come and what characters to expect. But let's look here. You have Deathstroke the Terminator by Marv Wolfman, Omnibus Vol.1, the DC logo in this white spine. All right, we are going to crack this book open and talk about the stories found in here. Check out the reading order, and of course what's missing, the extras, and the build. All right, let's go ahead and open up this omnibus here. I like this blue to orange gradient they're using there for the end sheets. Deathstroke the Terminator by Marv Wolfman Omnibus Vol.1. And then you have your credits: Marv Wolfman, Stephen Grant, Mike Barron, Dan Jurgens, David Cody Wise, and Len Wein. And then your main pencilers over here, like Steve Irwin and Art Nichols and Michael Golden, while you have your main inkers: Will Blyberg, Steve Mitchell, George Perez, and Michael Golden. Your colorists down here: Tom McGraw and Stuart Sheffer and Helen Vezic. And then your letters down here, like John Costanza and Gaspar Saladino. Deathstroke created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And then, of course, Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster by special arrangement with the Jerry Siegel family. You have this piece right here when he was with Cheshire and using that new costume, and then of course your table of contents. I love the fact that it's all covers by Mike Zeck, unless otherwise noted. You have a new introduction. So your table of contents tells you when the issues were released and what it was called. So you do have an introduction here, a brand new introduction in 2024 from Marv Wolfman, talking about how long it takes him to create a new character and how long that character kind of resides in his head, and how Deathstroke is one of the few characters, I think of two, characters that he thought about on the spot, knew about his, just his upbringing, everything that you needed to know. I love this introduction. I think it's a wonderful introduction to the character. and he tells you who the Marvel character is that he created the very same way at the very end of his introduction, if you want to go and read it. I love reading introductions. It doesn't really spoil anything if you've never read Deathstroke. So collected in here is Deathstroke, the 1991 series, 1 through 26, Deathstroke's Annual 1 and 2, and New Titans number 70, Superman 68, and then stories from Showcase 93, 6 through 11. Now, those stories from Showcase, you're like, wait a second, I already have that in the Nightfall Omnibus Vol.1. No. Showcase was an anthology series, so this is collecting it's not quite a Deathstroke story, it's more like a Peacemaker, Deadshot, and Deathstroke story, but it's still fun that it's collected in here. Interesting that that's in here and not what I think would have been a little bit more important to this collection. Okay, so first of all, we are kicking it off with issue number 70 of the New Titans, which is a very interesting issue because it doesn't feature the New Titans at all. As a matter of fact, it just features the character of Slade Wilson with Wintergreen, his buddy, his like kind of right-hand guy, the guy that I don't want to call him a Alfred or a Jarvis type of character because they are friends, and a lot of people kind of bromance them together. But they are in Central America and San Miguel trying to liberate this country, trying to help the right leader take over the country. And again, not featuring any of the Titans. Perhaps it's the prototype for what's to come to kind of test the waters that people would really be interested in reading about a character that, for lack of a better term, is very problematic, even then in the 80s when he was created. And then we have Deathstroke number 1. And this is a character that has been around since 1980. First appeared in the pages of the New Teen Titans, number 2, and again created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. We knew a lot about the character because he was so popular visually, and really interesting that he was this older guy that just had this vendetta against these kids because of his son Grant that he blames the Titans for killing. So he kept coming back as a hired assassin and then sometimes out of his own free will. And eventually, we got to learn the character of Wintergreen. We got to know a little bit about his military background and how long he was enlisted in the United States Army. And, of course, about the super soldier serum that he was injected with, which gives him the ability, or this agility that he has, and, of course, super strength and things like that. But here we get to learn more about the man behind this mask. We get to learn more about his family. So, in the first issue, somebody has gone after Adaline Kane, who is his ex-wife, and it is the mother of the characters like Grant and Joey Jericho. The character became Jericho later on, and somebody is targeting her, and you find out that this person is going after Deathstroke the Terminator. By the way, the Terminator title a few years right before Terminator 1. Not this comic, but the character's name itself. And it turns out to be none other than the Ravager. Now, a little bit of background and I guess some spoilers for what happened in the past. But Ravager in the original New Teen Titans issue number 2 was a character that was Slade Wilson's son. And he's the one that got killed off. So how can this Ravager be around? Again, Slade blaming the New Teen Titans, or just the Titans, for the death of his son. He feels responsible. Like, you see a little bit more of his character here and just how convoluted and a mess he is. A lot more than, the guy that manipulated, and it's in the introduction too, the guy that manipulated and took advantage of an underage girl and did a lot of things with her, which I mentioned at the beginning. He's a very problematic character. But this does make for a really interesting series. I think what Christopher Priest was able to do with his Rebirth era borrows heavily a lot from here. This reads more like, honestly, it kind of reminds me a lot of The Punisher. But anyway, you get to find out a little bit about his background. You get to find out who the new Ravager is. And that's how you start off this new 4-issue storyline. Is it really the return of his son? Is it really the original Ravager known as Grant? Later on, he will have another daughter named Rose, and she will end up joining the New Teen Titans. But for the meantime, there's only one Ravager. And then we have a one-off story, and then we get to the City of Assassins. City of Assassins, Slade decides to seek out this insider in the Gotham Police Department. And we are introduced to a new character that will play a big part in his life. But this new character is also in the Gotham Police Department, so there is an interaction here with Batman. As a matter of fact, my very first Deathstroke comic, because I was at the comic book store, I don't know if these made it to the newsstand just because of a little bit of the language and the violence. I think it was direct market only for a while, but I do remember going to the comic shop. No, it wasn't the comic store. It was the video rental store, and they started selling comics one summer. I can't remember what year. Whatever year it was the year that this came out. And I hadn't seen that Deathstroke had his own comic books. I was like, oh my gosh. But it was also $1.75. So, yes, this is the fight and the team up with Batman. And, of course, that leads into other things. That leads into the next storyline. First of all, we do have the new Vigilante here. So Vigilante, again, was a character that had his own comic, but this is the new incarnation of the Vigilante. And this is the character of Pat Trace, who was a police officer and decides that she wants to follow in the Deathstroke's footsteps and wants him to train her. And at first he's like, no, I've already done that. You know, I've lost a son, and I'm not going to do this again. And he's still at odds with his ex-wife, Adeline, because something else happens. Now, something that happens in the pages of the New Titans, but they talk about it here, something that he did, and Adeline holds him responsible for, with every absolute reason she has to hold him responsible. You don't get a recap as to what happened, but you do get some flashbacks, actually, in this issue as to what he had to do. And, hey, this is one of the very few landscape pieces right here. So it kind of spoils something for a book that hasn't been collected. So just go into this book knowing that it's not the biggest deal, honestly. I mean, you're smart. You can figure out some of these things. And honestly, this stuff happened in that issue was published in, 92, 93. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, statute of limitations and all that. But anyway, that was something important that happened in Deathstroke's life, and it happened in the pages of New Titans. So eventually, he does become kind of a public enemy in the eyes of everyone, including the Justice League. He ends up escaping Gotham City. He decides to train Patricia Trace, and he actually becomes really close to her in this secluded location. And after they're, forming this really strong bond with everything that happened with his ex-wife, he gets framed as a terrorist and becomes this public enemy. So the Justice League goes after him. Superman goes after him and tries to take him in. And I love the fact how this is mapped, because I can't imagine where else you would put this. But when he's arrested, and after fighting the Justice League and some new characters, you have the Eclipso story collected in here, which is from annual number 1, where Eclipso's taken over different people, and it's an event that is going across the DC universe, and it is collected here. And I can't imagine where else you would put it, because by now Pat is part of his duo, and if you put it before he is arrested, it just doesn't make any sense. So I think it makes sense to put it here in reading order. I think, mapping this was a little difficult, but it is collected in here in full, and it is the rematch against Nightwing. And then, of course, the team up. And then we get back to your previously uninterrupted storyline. And this is when things get a little confusing, because this is the Total Chaos saga. Now, Total Chaos was a crossover between Deathstroke the Terminator, and it kicks it off with issue number 14 with Child's Play, and then it's like Child's End. But it goes into New Titans 90 to 92, and then Team Titans, which is a new series, 1 through 3. Only the Deathstroke issues are collected in here. And it's a really complex storyline, because it is about this team from the future, the Team Titans, who travel back to the past to try to fulfill their mission of tracking and killing, well, no, they're not trying to kill, they're trying to capture Deathstroke, because there is this Lord of Chaos that exists outside of time, and it's all in because they're trying to help out Donna Troy, who of course was one of the founding members of the Teen Titans, and she is supposed to be the mother of this Lord Chaos. And it fits in so weird because Deathstroke is still being hunted down. So it's like you get small glimpses of what's happening in the other books, but you don't get a recap. And I think that's what's missing from here. You get no recap as to what happened in the previous part. So for example, these characters, the Teen Titans, you get new characters like Kilowatt or Terra, and you know how important Terra is if you've read the history of Slade Wilson, or if you read any of the new Teen Titans. So since it doesn't have a recap and it just jumps right in, it's kind of confusing, and it's a little confusing storyline to begin with anyway. I'm just really surprised they didn't put it in here. Because even though it's labeled as a Marv Wolfman Omnibus, there are other stories in here that aren't written by Marv Wolfman, and we're going to get to them here in a minute. But not before we get to this event right here, or this part, where Checkmate gets involved. So Deathstroke is left in this weird state where he has to be not revived, but rejuvenated in a way, because the super soldier serum is killing him. So this is where Cheshire comes along and recruits him to be one of these assassins, and it's all about nuclear weapons and getting those codes for the nuclear weapons, and Cheshire is the one that fixes him, and they decide to steal some nuclear weapons, and she has her own group of people. This is where he temporarily gets this new costume. Now that leads into this storyline right here, which again, perfectly mapped, but interesting that it's collected in here from Showcase. Again, this is the Showcase that was featured in Nightfall, but not these parts, because this is mainly Peacemaker and Deathstroke and Deadshot working together against Cobra with a K, not to be confused with those characters with a C. This is all written by Mike Barron, and it's got different artists doing each of these chapters. And I find that interesting that it's collected. I'm glad it is. I'm so glad it is. I think it was collected in the trade paperback. There is a rematch between Deathstroke and the new Vigilante, but now Stephen Grant has taken over the book and changing some things up. Feels like for the very beginning, some of these issues are very episodic, like meaning that the beginning of the issue has a problem and it is solved by the ending of the issue. But then he starts doing this long story arc and connecting these stories from the past together. And Deathstroke does eventually get his cool, badass costume back. And then we get the annual number 2, where Steve Irwin comes back, and we are introduced to this new character because of the Life or Bloodline storyline. Introducing new characters in every annual, including Hitman in the Demon annual. But this introduces us to Gunfire because of this alien invasion that triggered the meta-human in him. And that's honestly what wraps up this omnibus is that annual. And then we get some extras. So you have a little bit of the who's who in here with some nice pieces. Steve Irwin, I had the trade paperbacks. I wanted to go back to this. I promise I'll go back to the issue here in a second. But his art is very reminiscent of that of George Perez and Tom Grumet, who of course went and drew the New Titans. But I don't think I appreciated it as much when I had the trades. So this stuff in here has been collected in trade paperback before. I think the trade went on for another story arc. This is the trade paperback cover, the original one from Full Circle, and then you have original art here from Mike Zeck's covers, and then this eyepiece and your end sheets. Now let's look at the binding. 920 pages, and it is sewn binding. Not much of an eye, that is due to the excess glue, and I've broken it in quite a bit. I stretched the spine 4 times, I think. The binding kind of reminds me a little bit of the old school, like DC Omnis. By the way, 920 pages. I see a lot of solicits and places online that still have this at 1,000 pages. It's only 920. This is using the new satin paper stock that DC has been using in their Omnis. So there is a little bit of bleed through. We've seen worse, but we've also seen better. And as far as the way the book lays over, not a lot of spread pages here towards the beginning, but let me see. I'll just show you a page from the beginning to kind of give you an idea. There is a little bit of gutter loss, and having to hold down, and even holding it down, you can't get the whole word in there. But again, that's mainly due to the binding. I don't know if it can get better, and maybe it's just my copy that is a fluke, because I've seen a lot of DC Omnis lately that have a really good eye. Even printed with the satin paper stock that they're using. But I do remember when I was rereading some of these issues that I had to hold it down a little bit just to get some of the words that are in there that are almost in the gutter. But that is it. That is the very first volume. Hopefully we will get a volume 2 to wrap up this omnibus series and then more Deathstroke. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsors.
If you're in Europe and you're interested in buying these books, definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices, flat shipping rate of €12 for all EU countries, emails answered within 24 hours, waltscomicshop.com, and you can use the code nearmintcon at checkout and get free shipping for all EU countries with your first order over €40. That's Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ding!
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count and build of the omnibus, as well as where it fits in, sort of, if you're collecting Deathstroke in only omnibus format. If you have any questions, leave the questions down below. Don't forget to smash that like button and let me know what other era Deathstroke you would love to see collected in omnibus format. Do you want to see the beginning of the New 52, or do you want to see a continuation of the Deathstroke by Marv Wolfman? Check us out on Spreadshop and Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And a big thank you to our patrons for making videos like this possible. That's it, everybody. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.